This is your story, and it is. Each one of them could make that legitimate case, and that's a tough feat to pull off. And another amazing feat you pull off in this film is the balance of the great dark humor and the crazy action and the violent stuff with some genuinely touching moments. I don't know how many other directors could have pulled off a moment where a total fucking psychopath on the trail of trying to kill someone has this great moment with his son. That never happened in Friday the 13th. We never see Jason put the blade down and have a hugging moment. How do you pull that off?
Well, that's Bobby Carlyle, I mean, he was very, you could tell that scene moved him because he has a very complex relationship. His own father had passed away recently, and who had brought him up, and so there was a complex well of emotion there, really. And so you just need that. You need a wonderful actor, and then you just need to mention hotel management as a career. And you've got a kind of good ingredients going, So.
And we're going to open it up for questions in just a second. I know a lot of you have some questions to ask. And of course, I have to ask about the music because the soundtrack for the original is it's changed so many people's lives, and people play it over and over again. And there were some echoes of that, but how do you come about deciding? Because this, again, it's not just like, well, we'll slap this song on here. The music becomes like a character in the film.
Yeah, it was obviously like one of the problems with doing a sequel is everybody goes, oh great, so the soundtrack will be just as good, yeah? And it's like, oh. So it's like, but we wanted to try and touch, because what you get with music is you get that emotional trigger. That kind of muscle memory is an incredibly powerful tool if you can harness it. But so we wanted to kind of use it, but then we wanted to kind of, if we did touch the original film, it had to be remixed or reimagined, and we were very lucky that Prodigy did a remix of Lost for Life for us, so that you can hear it, and when you do hear it, it's the same but different. And the Underworld, Born Slippy as well, which they kind of reimagined for us. And we're very lucky. So then it was, can you find a kind of modern heartbeat for the film? Because I always think of the soundtrack as the heartbeat of the film. And in the first film, it was the Underworld album, Dub No Bass with My Headman, which was the heartbeat. And then I kind of stumbled into this band called Young Fathers, who come from the same estates around Edinburgh that Irvine was writing his stories about 25 years ago. And they are producing this music at the moment, and it's like, there's about 3 or 4 of their tracks on it, and I would recommend that. They're a wonderful band, lovely bunch of guys. And they came in, I invited them in, I was desperate to get them involved in the film, and they came in and they weren't very impressed, it was just like, it's boring, and movies are kind of like boring, and it's just repetitive. And I thought I'd blown it with them, and then a couple of days later they sent this new track that they'd written for the film, and which is the one at the end on the collapsing buildings, Only God Knows. And they were a wonderful discovery. And then you're in bliss then, because you don't feel you're in charge, you just kind of like, it's like you with your giving your not, you just feel like you can kind of let the thing play, really.
All right, we have time for just a few questions. If anyone's got a question, do we have a microphone, or I can just repeat the questions if people can't hear it? Let's start with that gentleman right there in the middle. Right, you. No, the guy that turned his head and said, shit, it's not me. No, it's you! It's you! No pressure.
Excellent. One detail I love in this film is the use of those facial distortion apps you get on the phone where they have like dog noses and stuff, because it fits the hallucinogenic sort of quality of all the drug sequences. And I love the use of social media in that Choose Life monologue. I just want to ask about kind of the formation of that monologue in that sequence. It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, when you're doing a sequel, everybody says, great, so the soundtrack will be just as good, yeah? And then they go, the second thing they say is, and there'll be an update, yeah? The Choose Life speech. So it's like, okay, there'll be an update of the Choose Life. But and obviously it begins as kind of litany, which is reminiscent of the first film. But actually the speech is quite confessional, and it's quite angry, and quite vulnerable, I think. Because he eventually says, choose disappointment. And he has, in a way, he's disappointed with his own life. And he says, choose losing the ones you love, which is a reference to his mother, whose funeral he's not gone back for. That's very acute, stuff like that. And choosing not turning out who you wanted to be, really. Which is something we can all empathise with at different times of our lives, So it became something that started off as a box ticker, you know, and became something a bit like the medical emergency at the beginning, which gave us the reason to make the film. It became more personal about us, really, about me and John Hodge, the screenwriter, and about the actors. You know, we all kind of matrixed in our own disappointment in ourselves into it as well. So it becomes very personal like that, yeah. As well as being good fun, you hope, yeah.
Good question. Hello.
So the question to use the flashbacks to the original film, was that always part of the script, or did that evolve over the course of your filming the movies?
I'm going to repeat this just over here. The question is about the use of flashbacks to the original film. Was that always a part of your vision?
There was one thing that was always in the script, which is that scene where Spud comes out of the boxing after he's been knocked out in the boxing, and he steps out into Calton Road, and he has the memory of the original film. But other than that, there was nothing really, other than like some music references like the record player and just a snatch of. And what we did is that when we got into editing, we started to experiment with drawing threads from one film to the other film. And it was the editing process. And originally, at one point, we had like 5 minutes of the original film in this film. And eventually we reduced it. It's only about a minute what you have of the original film in there. But it feels more, I think, because less is more. It feels like you've experienced it more. Yeah. And they kind of talk to each other, the films, which is weird. I mean, and I can't really, but they do. I mean, it's just like, it's been a very odd process by which they kind of, and then because a lot of people know the original film, you also have a conversation with the film. And I was just saying to Richard at the beginning, it's been very odd this, because you go around promoting films and your job is introducing people to the strangeness of the world you're depicting. But in this case, you're already invested. You've got an opinion already, you know, if you've seen the first film. So that's been very strange dealing with that, you know.
There's also there's that third element as well of the childhood scenes, you know, which is kind of, obviously not in the first film, but kind of another element, that whole kind of, their history and their kind of nostalgia.
Yeah, there's something beautiful and heartbreaking when you see just the brief glimpses when they're, 8 or something like that, because we know, of course, what's in store for them, good and bad. That's amazing what you mentioned about just about a minute or so, Danny, because it does feel like we're kind of imprinting on that. It's almost like when someone has a dream and they think they've been asleep for a half hour, and it was 45 seconds. Over here.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for an amazing film. Mr. Boyle, I have a question for you. It seems like Underworld really had a tremendous influence on you in the first film. And I've noticed over time you've continued to work with Rick Smith.
Yeah.
Do you see this going forward as a partnership, a collaboration with both Rick Smith, Underworld, and Tomato, their advertising company?
It's about Rick Smith, the guy from Underworld who did the music for the film. Yeah, I did the Olympics with him, the opening ceremony of the Olympics, and we did this stage play Frankenstein with him, as well as a number of films, Sunshine, and so it's wonderful to. What's great about having collaborators, and it is interesting, like with this film, going back to people that you'd already worked with, is that you know each other, and you don't have to. Nobody pretends that you're greater than you are. Nobody kind of has any illusions about that. It is, as Irvine said, it's a collaborative process. You know, because we sort of grew up together, doing it together, really, and that is really healthy. You know, because one of the dangers when you do films, and especially when they're successful, is the bullshit you get from people. You know, telling you how wonderful you are, and it does affect you. It ruins you. You know, you can feel it affect you. And it's why you sometimes rely on collaborators who knew you and have got you out of very dangerous corners before, you know, and kind of sticky situations. So, and you're indebted to them, you know. And they're people who I think of as like mini directors myself. You know, like Mini Me in the, you know, like Mini Me. I think of them like that because they could direct, but they don't really want to because they don't want the hassle that goes with it, you know, and the long hours, so they want to. But I think of them as mini-me directors. Yeah.
Great question.
Hi, I had a question. First off, fantastic job. I thought the film was amazing. It was great seeing old friends grow up. And secondly, directed to Mr. Welsh, I first read Trainspotting sitting on a bench in Telluride, Colorado back in like 1999. And the thing that kind of screwed with my mind was that it was written in Scottish dialect. And it like consumed my inner monologue. Like every time I would turn the corner, I'd be like, make a right. And do you intentionally write like that, or do you strip it out and then go back over it and try to hone it in the dialect that so chose?
Yeah, it kind of screwed my mind as well because you know, I mean, when I first started writing it, I kind of wrote it in standard English, and it seemed to be very flat. You know, it's not. I mean, standard English is a great kind of language, but it's very precise, and it's, you know, it's very imperialistic. It's a controlling administrator's language, and I wanted something that was a bit more funky and beatier. I've been kind of taking loads of ecstasy and jumping around in clubs and all that, and banging, you know, getting into house music, doing a bit of DJing, and I wanted something that had that kind of 4/4 beat to it. I wanted to kind of capture that kind of energy, if you like, in literature. And again, I started to look at kind of phonetic sort of Scots and look at how people actually spoke, and not just in dialogue but in narrative as well, because I thought it was important to get to the character, to give them the voice, to control the narrative, and you know, and it seemed to me to you know, there seemed to be a kind of truth in it that I didn't sort of see in the, and so I kind of started doing that, and when I looked at it, I almost kind of shat myself because I thought, I can't read this, it's just a mess, it means nothing at all. Because you're not used to seeing words on a page like that. And it's the same for everybody. It doesn't matter if they come from Edinburgh or if they come from kind of, you know, sort of Edmonton, or, you know, sort of, you know, or kind, you know, I shouldn't have said either, because I'm struggling to think of places all over the world that begin with E now. But, yeah, but, you know, it's like wherever you come from, if you're an English speaker, if you know English, it's the very same, and it takes you about maybe about 20 pages to get into the rhythm of it, and then you're away. It doesn't really make any difference.
It's interesting though, I at least I felt this way seeing the film a couple of weeks ago, maybe you guys did. It's almost the same thing with the characters. The first 3 or 4 minutes you're like, oh, what the fuck? And then you just kind of fall into it, and then you just get comfortable with it again, right? It just takes a couple of minutes, and then you're back in it. We have time for like 2 more questions. I'm gonna go way up there.